Guys, welcome back. Let's get started with this week's playlist. Right, so this is the bear version of the market that we've been monitoring for some time, and you can see we've done the ABC wave, and right now we're hovering right over the 1.23 fib. Right, so if we start to break down from the 1.23 fib, so let's say 4484, then you can consider this X wave complete before we come down for the Y wave. Alternatively, right, we could still push higher, right? Let's say we break over the high at 4540, right? I still think, the market would have I think we'd have a really bullish week in that case, where we'd push again. We know this line has been used as support. We retested it. We broke down from that. We also broke down from this downtrend resistance, right? And also on the daily chart, you can see we're sitting over the 200, right? So a lot of signs do, right, or can point to the fact that we can go to 4654 and even 4700, right? It's completely possible. But as I mentioned, right, we have completed the minimum requirements required for this X wave, as a result of which I think that we could, this 1.23 fib, like this 4488, right? That's the first level of confirmation, right? I'd say if you're really looking to short the market, wait for it to break 4400, right? 4420-ish, right? Because we know this was initially used as resistance. This 4267 was support, right? We broke over it. We came to retest. We failed. We came back down again. Again, we used it as support and resistance, and we came down. So another failure to hold this level as support, right? We can retest it to move higher, right? But I think that retest was already done here, right? You guys can see we retested it, then we made a higher high and we progressed further, right? So breaking back to this level honestly doesn't make sense for the bulls, like in a market structure kind of standpoint, right? If they do come break below, come anywhere near 4400, I think this 4267 will be tested, right? Again, I don't think the 4267 will hold in this case because, as I mentioned, right, in an Elliot wave standpoint, we are coming down for that Y wave lower rate. That's number one. Number two is also that when you fail to use something as support for so many times, right, it's not gonna somehow magically hold a third time, right? I think a lot of people are expecting something like an inverse head and shoulders where you retest this level before it goes higher, right? So again, that's totally possible, right? You can see it's kind of like trying to form an equal legs kind of structure in this method, right? However, the one problem I do see with that is that this area, right, like there's nothing that's gonna hold it as support once more, right? The problem with an inverse head and shoulders is that the structure that you see here, right, an inverse head and shoulders would have been better suited, right, if the market did something like this where it went straight up, then came to retest, and then we went higher, right? When you see something that's forming like an inverse H, like you see on this chart, right, generally those inverse H's, right, they're just counter trend bounces for this bigger move down, right, before we again reject resistance here and make a new low. So if this should have been an inverse head and shoulders, right, it would have rather or more likely been that we actually went straight up, right? We didn't actually reject here. This move, right, would have gone all the way to, let's say, 4600, then we came down to retest, and then we had a massive bullish wave, right? That is a more symmetrical, I'd say, market structure for inverse head and shoulders. But again, I can't show you one more version, right? I did tell you that if we broke this high, we'd push all the way to the upside. But again, there is the third possibility where this entire thing would have been your A wave, right? We come down for the B before we have the C wave. So in this case, the inverse head and shoulders does play out, right? We just wouldn't make a new high. We'd probably go all the way almost to all-time high, but we don't make the all-time high before we come back down. So yes, I could see that potentially play out, right? But I'd rank that the least probable out of the three scenarios. Right now, I am still considering this as my main scenario because, let's go over some of the key charts, right? Like Apple. For Apple, for example, you can see that we did break the downtrend resistance, right? But one thing to keep in mind is that this was the channel Apple has been in since October of 2020, right? We broke up and then we had a massive false breakout, and then we use the bottom of this trend line to bounce again. Generally, when you have a massive fake breakout like this, the next move to the upside is generally a counter trend bounce. So based on that, right, based on the fact that this, in my opinion, that Elliot wave is telling me this is a B wave, and you can see exactly we've rejected at the 0.236 fib, right? And then we've, started to sell off. So again, as long as Apple remains below 175.35, right, this assumption holds true, in which case, again, as I mentioned, this being the end of the X wave makes a lot of sense, right? Because it's aligned with Apple, and where Apple goes, the market goes, right? Amazon, again, for example, you can see that we came to retest this flag that we broke down from, right? And now it's found resistance. And again, the 200 days, right, where the flag retest is. So this can act as heavy resistance for the market to come back down. Again, further proof that FANG is weak, right? Google, again, for example, you can see that we broke a 2-year channel. We had that earnings pump, right, to retest it. We came back down. Again, you're making a lower high once again, right? Google as well. I have it in a X wave coming down for a Y wave, right? So all of these, right, all of the major FANG stocks are just, kind of giving credibility to the fact that the market can go back down. Microsoft alone, you can see that we're only at the 0.5 fib. We can most definitely push to 315 and 328, right? So Microsoft is one stock that I could definitely see, right? The one reason why the market could still continue to push higher, right? Apple and Amazon can still go sideways and remain within the range, while, Microsoft pushes higher to take the market higher with it, right? Which is why I could still see this possible, right? But again, 0.5 is the minimum fib requirement, as a result of which I could definitely, see this be the range where Microsoft actually, finds rejection before it sells up. You can also see that this is a major, point of control and volume profile, right? So rejection below 296 does become very bearish for Microsoft, and you can also see that it is in this channel, right? So break back into the channel will most definitely take it back to 248, right? So these are all the major stocks. Tesla, again, let's look at it, right? Another major market contributor. You can see this A wave, we've hit the 1.618 and we've rejected perfectly there. So this ABC, right, minimum requirements have been fulfilled. And Tesla, I'm honestly I really do think that Tesla will retest 600, 500. The reason for that, I mentioned its perfect harmony for Elliott wave. Again, let me show you another profile of Tesla, right? You guys can see that in Tesla, right? You can see that this was the trend line that held as support, right? And as soon as we broke down, consolidated below and sold off, right? Tesla had a major sell-off. Right now, you can see the 1.618 fib, right? Exactly aligns with the retesting where Tesla actually broke down from. So same as Amazon, Tesla is at a very critical point, right? Tesla has gone to retest the area it actually broke down from. So if both Amazon and Tesla charts hold true, where it's just going to retest and then, has a massive failure, right? As we know that most stocks do retest the area they broke down from, then that honestly starts a really bearish wave for the market, right? We could honestly sell off till the month of May. So these are all kind of the reasons why I think the X wave could have ended here. But again, you can never be too complacent, right? The market can always do whatever it wants, and as a result of which you should be prepared for all scenarios. So this is just my take on the market, right? So now let's move on to this week's wave list and see what we got there. The first, stock I have is Mrna. The reason for that is on Friday. So I personally, right now, you can see on Mrna, right, if you go to the long-term chart, right, we did break out from this massive channel that held the support. Again, this is a good example of a stock, what I mentioned for Tesla, right? It's gone to retest it. You can see Mrna, right? It did the same thing. It went to retest where it broke down from. And you can see since it broke down, right, it had this massive sell-off. So this is kind of this, I'm not saying Tesla's going to sell off 67%, right? But it's kind of this similar thing that I can see for Tesla, right? It broke down, it's going to retest where it broke down from, and it has the massive sell-off. So I've seen that structure on a lot of stocks, which is why I'm very cautious right now on the market. But that's besides the point, right? What I want to show you in Mrna is that I think this is where, right, the previous wave 4 rejected. You can also see I drew a small channel on this upward wave, and we did break out of the channel, right? So personally, I think when this bounce ends on mRNA, right, when it breaks this low 164, I think mRNA will break this, right? So at minimum, I could see it retesting this area right before it heads higher, right? That's the reason you can see my targets are 148, 124, right? I think regardless of bull or bear, right, mRNA downside trigger has started. And I do think we will retest this volume shelf on 148, right? And it will have a minor bounce as long as it stays below 156 on the next bounce. I think it will come to test 128. So that's the reason I have mRNA, on the weekly wait list as the first play. Again, the next one, before I touch on coin, right, I want to show you something, right? Right now, you can see that this is the triangle Bitcoin has been, right? You can see this A, B, C, D, E, and we actually, broke out of this channel, right? So I was right when I drew these green lines and these red lines, right? We were still stuck in this range, right? So both moves could have been possible, but right now, since we broke out of this, right, you can see Bitcoin actually has a lot of room to the upside, in which case, right, I would reconsider my Bitcoin chart and say that, see, again, it can still, right, even from here, it can sell off, right? I'd ideally want Bitcoin to break over 49K so I can run to 56K. But given that we've broken out of a bullish triangle structure, I'd say that, and the fact that the market, right, if we go to ES chart, you can see that we've actually, this can be a B wave, right, that has ended, which we're coming back down. Bitcoin is obviously, lagging the broader market move, right? In which case I can, say that Bitcoin, this is the A wave for Bitcoin ended, right? We're starting the B wave to the upside, right? I can see it go as high as 55K before it comes down to C wave. Again, as long as Bitcoin stays over 43, this chart is possible, right? We can definitely hold this breakout and move to the upside. I can definitely, see that happen where this is your A wave, this is your B wave, and this is your C wave, right? And in that, this is your wave 1, wave 2, we have a wave 3, wave 4, wave 5. So Bitcoin would be in a very bullish stance. So as long as it stays over 43, this is definitely possible, right? So that's the reason I have, the call I have is actually I'm bullish on coin, right? You can see what I said for coin is over 192. You can definitely see 210, 250, right? And another reason for that, you can see this is actually the downtrend channel for coin, right? This purple trend line has been used as resistance. And you can see that this is where the wave 3 ended. This was your wave 4. And then again, we had some kind of ending diagonal here, right? We had an ending diagonal pattern, right? Where you can see that sellers are minimizing, right? Every time sellers try to push lower, the buyers were able to step in. So generally, when you see this kind of formation, it's generally close to a short-term bottom, right? And the fact that Bitcoin chart kind of looks bullish makes me believe that that coin also, right? It's broken 2 layers of downtrend resistance, as a result of which I think, coin can be really bullish. My first target is 210. And my next target is about 247, 250, right? Over 210, it can definitely, it's going to run really fast to these targets. And this is me being conservative. I can definitely see 284 too. But that's, it needs to prove itself. So that's the reason I have coin calls on there, right? Crowd, another growth stock that's been really, really stubborn, guys. But the thing is, it will see 155, right? Like I'm really adamant about the fact that it can see 155. The reason for that, again, you can see that it broke down from this ending diagonal wave 5, right? Crowd, once it broke down, had a massive sell-off. And when you have a massive sell-off, right, you can see it sold off almost like 50% from all-time highs, right? So it is just having a counter trend bounce, right? Again, I can, right? If it breaks over 225, that's the reason stop is at 225, can definitely go to 245, right? That's your next. If crowd ends up at 245, it's definitely a higher probability short, right? Than where it is right now. But I personally, you can see that right now it's at the 1.23 fib, right? And if the market sells off, right? If the market sells off the way it's supposed to, then crowd would honestly be one of the first stocks that's going to have a massive downfall, right? I'm really adamant crowd will see 155 again, right? So I do have 4 to 5 weeks on the wave list as a time limit, but if you buy 2 to 3 months, it's definitely a higher probability trade. I can definitely see it coming down to make a new low. Again, this is either a wave 5 to the downside, right? You can also see this is where the previous wave 4 rejected, or this is a wave B that completes, and then you have a more aggressive wave C sell-off. So in both cases, right, crowd is going to face downside really soon. So that's the reason I have this on my weekly watch list, right? The next one is EMPH. Again, solar stocks did have a nice move to the upside, but again, you can see same thing here, right? You can see the ABC waves right against the 1.23 fib, right? Same as crowd. As long as it stays below 204, right? I think it can sell off and make a new low, right? If you go to see if this has, let's check, right? Let's check and see if it has bearish divergence, right? And you can see that here, right? This is where it made its previous high, right? As it's gone to make new highs, you can see it's made lower highs. So this is called bearish divergence as price makes new highs and your indicator makes lower highs. It's kind of signaling to you that, you know, the bull cover is dying out and, you know, EMPH is likely to come back to the downside. So again, I can definitely see this coming down for a wave C, right? A more aggressive sell-off coming to the downside. So that's the reason I have EMPH puts, right, on this week's watch list. I discussed Apple already with you guys, right? That it's finished its X wave. This is also where it's previously rejected. Right now it's selling off, right? Again, you can anticipate a bounce at open. That should give you an entry for puts, right? So again, as long as it stays below 175, I think this chart is very valid, can come to the downside. So that it's 175 is a strict stop loss, right? If it breaks over that, then I think Apple will definitely see 200, right? So again, this is why I have Apple puts. You can see it has broken out of this channel, but I personally think this is a fake breakout and we're going to have a massive downside move, right? But that's not to rule out the fact that, you know, Apple can't go on to make new highs where this is your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I definitely don't rule it out, but I think the risk reward on Apple is pretty juicy right now. So that's the reason I have Apple puts on this week's watch list. MSTR, again, another Bitcoin play, right? I showed you guys my Bitcoin chart and you can see this pink line can be viewed as downtrend resistance. We came down, retested it, and now we're moving higher. So all of this, right? This just the structure is kind of bullish. I definitely don't like this sideways action, right? I would have liked a more bullish sequence, but that's not to say that it cannot, right? I think at minimum 520 is very possible, right? You can see my targets are 520 and 600, right? That is, if it stays and breaks above 520, then I think 600 can come very easily. But again, you can see this fib and this upward channel, right? 520 is a very important area. So again, be sure to take profits here, 520, right? If it can stay above 520, then I think it's a very easy move to 600, 650. So again, I do have, again, Bitcoin calls on here again. And the last one is BBDY, right? Ever since it sold off after this pump, it's just kind of been sideways. But again, as I mentioned, it is in a C wave, right? It can still go sideways for a few days or a week before it comes down for a 3, 4, 5. Ultimately, I think it's going to see $9, right? And a more overshoot would be $5. But this chart is more likely to play out because, right, I drew this right when it pumped to B and you saw the massive kind of sell-off it had. So that's why I'm really confident in this chart. But the problem is, as I mentioned, because of the massive downside move it had, right? And the upside move, right? That's a lot of volatility that plays out, which means it can still stay sideways for a few weeks. So you can either wait for it to break, you know, 21, or you can buy a lot of time on your puts, right? Either one would work. So that's all for this week's watch list. I hope you guys have a great, you know, week, and I'll see you guys.